Boy, you got to thank the maker for people like Rick Mercer, Mark Fiore for bringing us all that kind of stuff like that. Of course, if you're an atheist, you got to thank humans for doing such things. Well, we lay somewhere in between that. This is Centerline of Broadcasting right now. I am Darin Howard.
And I am Robert Nisbet.
Municipal sustainability is what we're talking about. But what we're going to do right now is take a quick break for those people who need a break. We're going to come back, talk about the next 2 hours, and we've got more coming up for you. Stay tuned. This is Radio Free Canada.
You're insecure. Jeans for men.
If hefting out Hank in front of any old Henry gives you the heebie-jeebies, then Urine Secure is right for you. Simply deploy the spring-loaded tension rods before stepping up to the urinal, and then pull the cord for that custom fit. Urine Secure works with any John, and your Hank will be happily hidden from sight. But for those persistent onlookers, the No Gaze Handy Nap provides that added security you just can't get anywhere else. Additionally, it keeps you at a safe distance from the urinal by acting as a guide. You'll know you are safe from public germs and feel confident that no one can peep your tom. Urine Secure conceals the most unsightly moles, rashes, and that insidious, I can't believe you're peeing out of that mockery. So use Urine Secure today and go anywhere with confidence.
Here's a beer you gotta try, a beer so bold and true. And when you know who drinks this beer, you'll want to drink it too. Jesus Beer.
Table for 13, please. This is my body. This is my blood. And this is my beer.
The King of Kings of Beer.
From a guy who washed away your sins comes a beer to wash away your thirst.
Jesus Beer.
Jesus Christ, that's good beer.
Jesus Beer.
Ah, yes, earning points towards getting struck by lightning while we're out in public. This is Radio Free Canada, and I love it. Oh, praise Jesus for that beer. You know what? Jesus did turn water into wine, and it was alcoholic wine. Why do we know this? Because ancient Hebrews had a word for non-alcoholic wine. They called it grape juice. So remember, Jesus did support drinking in moderation. Of course, we're going to take a break here at the top of the hour. Of course, we've got some news, and network's got to catch up to us. We're going to be running some stuff during YouTube, for YouTube, during the break, so don't go anywhere. And, of course, we got time enough for one more story. What do we got?
Well, apparently the Koch brothers were funding a climate change study.
Yeah, Koch brothers.
And it seems their scientist, their paid stooge, decided that he found out things that made him uncomfortable with promoting their line.
Tell me more. Show me more.
I'll let him tell you.
I'd spent 10 years studying ancient climate, but became intensely interested in global warming. When I looked at the data and the work done by others, I found that there were legitimate skeptics that had raised issues that I could not find the answers to. These had to do with the fact that they had carefully selected their data from a much larger data set, from the fact that there was a poor quality of the data stations, that there was an urban heat island effect, and that they had adjusted the data in a way that there was no record. These bothered me enough that I could not find the answers. We had to create our own project in order to directly address them. About a year ago, we had sufficient data that I could see for the first time in a compelling way that global warming really had occurred, that there had been something like 2/3 of a degree temperature rise over the last 50 years. But about 3 to 6 months ago, we were able to push the record back 250 years. This is prior to the American Revolution. This includes data reported by Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. When we did that, we had a long record, and based on that, we could look for the signatures, the fingerprints, if you like, of volcanoes, of solar variability, of ocean currents, of greenhouse gases. to our shock, the volcanic eruptions were all very short-lived. So they had an effect, but only for a few years. The long-term trend, there was no component of that due to the solar variability. In the end, a really good match came to the greenhouse gases. That came as a surprise to me because I had really thought that the ocean currents and the variability of the sun would dominate, but it wasn't the case. It was purely greenhouse gases. At that point, my conclusion was not only is global warming real, but essentially all of it is caused by humans. Well, the reaction has been mixed, I would say. I don't expect anybody to say, oh, Mueller's changed his mind, therefore I will too. No, we expect that the careful reading of our papers, which have been posted online, the looking at our computer programs, and posting of all of our data so people can reproduce what we did, that will take weeks to months. Ultimately, I think what we're trying to do is increase the transparency of science, show that objective analysis can reach these conclusions. And in the end, science is that small realm of human knowledge on which there can and should be universal agreement. So I expect the science will hold up, and over time, people will be persuaded.
The science is starting to speak for itself. If you don't think there's global warming going on, we're not sure what rock you're living under.
And if you don't want to call it global warming, call it climate change. I asked the people in New York if they believe in climate change.
All you have to do is ask anybody who used to be a city worker in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada, where we're broadcasting from. We used to have a full-time staff for snow removal here. Now it's subcontracted.
There's temporary agencies.
Yep, it's only temporary snow removal in Kelowna now. We don't understand why if we listen to major media.
Well, we don't have that much snow all the time in Kelowna either now. Last year there was hardly any at all.
I think they rolled the snow removal a couple times last year. This year, it's rolling today. But remember, we used to have full-time staff. We used to have 5 snow removers running full shifts in Kelowna. And that all came to an end about a decade ago. We're covering it, the story that they don't want us to cover. Remember, oil and banks are the cause of climate change right now. We're lining up for a war that's manufactured out of nowhere from Iran. And, of course, Harper's going to ignore the fact that the United States is legalizing pot right now.
Yeah, I know. But don't forget, too, this climate change thing is a real concern. And people need to be concerned about this.
Yeah. It's
okay. Important. I mean, these climate change skeptics out there, it's like, really? Really?
Really? Okay, while we shake our collective heads, make sure you step back and check in on us. Remember, we've got a couple major campaigns coming up, and get informed. And we'll be right back with more Radio Free Canada.
On the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 men armed with box cutters directed by a man on dialysis in a cave fortress halfway around the world using a satellite phone and a laptop directed the most sophisticated penetration of the most heavily defended airspace in the world, overpowering the passengers and the military combat-trained pilots on 4 commercial aircraft before flying those planes wildly off course for over an hour without being molested by a single fighter interceptor. These 19 hijackers, devout religious fundamentalists who like to drink alcohol, snort cocaine, and live with pink-haired strippers, managed to knock down 3 buildings with 2 planes in New York. While in Washington, a pilot who couldn't handle a single-engine Cessna was able to fly a 757 in an 8,000-foot descending 270-degree corkscrew turn to come exactly level with the ground, hitting the Pentagon in the budget analyst office where DoD staffers were working on the mystery of the $2.3 trillion that Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld had announced missing from the Pentagon's coffers in a press conference the day before, on September 10th, 2001. Luckily, the news anchors knew who did it within minutes.
Osama bin Laden.
The pundits knew within hours.
Osama bin Laden.
The administration knew within the day.
Terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
And the evidence literally fell into the FBI's lap.
That a hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
But for some reason, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists demanded an investigation into the greatest attack on American soil in history. That investigation was delayed, underfunded, set up to fail, a conflict of interest, and a cover-up from start to finish. It was based on testimony extracted through torture, the records of which were destroyed. It failed to mention the existence of WTC-7, Able Danger, P-TECH, Sibel Edmonds, OBL and the CIA, and the drills of hijacked aircraft being flown into buildings that were being simulated at the precise same time that those events were actually happening. It was lied to by the Pentagon, the CIA, the Bush administration, and as for Bush and Cheney, Well, no one knows what they told it because they testified in secret, off the record, not under oath, and behind closed doors. It didn't bother to look at who funded the attacks because that question is ultimately of little practical significance. Still, the 9/11 Commission did brilliantly answering all of the questions the public had, except most of the victims' family members' questions, and pinned blame on all the people responsible, although no one so much as lost their job, determining the attacks were
failure of imagination.
Because
nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
Except the Pentagon, FEMA, NORAD, and the NRO. The DIA destroyed 2.5 terabytes of data on Able Danger, but that's okay because it probably wasn't important. The SEC destroyed their records on the investigation into the insider trading before the attacks, but that's okay because destroying the records of the largest investigation in SEC history is just part of routine record keeping. NIST has classified the data that they used for their model of WTC-7's collapse, but that's okay because knowing how they made their model of the collapse would jeopardize public safety. The FBI has argued that all material related to their investigation of 9/11 should be kept secret from the public, but that's okay because the FBI probably has nothing to hide. This man never existed, nor is anything he had to say worthy of your attention, and if you say otherwise, you are a paranoid conspiracy theorist and deserve to be shunned by all of humanity. Likewise him, and her. And her, and her, and him. Osama bin Laden lived in a cave fortress in the hills of Afghanistan, but somehow got away. Then he was hiding out in Tora Bora, but somehow got away. Then he lived in Abbottabad for years, taunting the most comprehensive intelligence dragnet employing the most sophisticated technology in the history of the world for a decade, releasing video after video with complete impunity and getting younger and younger as he did so, before finally being found in a daring SEAL team raid which wasn't recorded on video, in which he didn't resist or use his wife as a human shield, and in which these crack special forces operatives panicked and killed this unarmed man, supposedly the best source of intelligence about those dastardly terrorists on the entire planet. Then they dumped his body in the ocean before telling anyone about it. Then a couple dozen of that team's members died in a helicopter crash in Afghanistan. This is the story of 9/11, brought to you by the media which told you the hard truths about
his head could be seen to move violently forward.
And
they took the babies out of the incubators.
And
mobile production facilities.
And
the rescue of Jessica Lynch.
If you have any questions about this story, you are a batshit paranoid tinfoil dog-abusing baby hater and will be reviled by everyone. If you love your country and or freedom, happiness, rainbows, rock and roll, puppy dogs, apple pie, and your grandma, you will never ever express doubts about any part of this story to anyone. Ever. This has been a public service announcement by the Friends of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DIA, SEC, MSM, White House, NIST, and the 9/11 Commission. Because ignorance is strength.